Now we are officially recording it. If you don't wish to be visible on the recording, please just feel free to keep your camera off. We're also encouraging participants to keep their microphones muted to reduce background noise. I muted everyone by default, so I'm guessing that you'll stay muted for the length of this program. If you'd like to pose a question to the presenters, please just use the chat window, and you can access that in the toolbar, which I believe is at the top of your screen. And so now I'd like to introduce our presenters for this morning's webinar, Jennifer Waldner and Ruth Schultz from the Madison Metropolitan School District. We're very grateful for their willingness to share their experience and expertise with all of our colleagues. Ruth and Jennifer, please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Abdallah. I think Scott's going to be putting up our slides for us here.
Yes, thank you.
And while he's doing that, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Waldner. I'm the Director of State and Federal Programs for the Madison School District. In that capacity, I am budgeting and grant managing across all the titles that are coming to the school district, and also working with the programs associated through ESSA. So really, ESSA is that umbrella that I work under. So I'm also the homeless liaison, the foster liaison. I work with migrant education, Native American education, and all the private parochial services that come through our entitlement grants. And I am going to ask my colleague, Ruth, to introduce herself.
Okay, so thank you, Scott, and thank you, Abdallah, for inviting us. I am Ruth Schultz. I am the grants accountant for Madison Metropolitan School District. I actually do all of the state and federal grants and basically do everything. I work very closely with all the grant managers. Our budgeting process is very detailed, and I do all the claims for all the grants, and I also manage the single audit. So I look forward to working with you guys and answering any questions from the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. So I have to back up, and true story, I have to put out there that I used to work at DPI almost, 8 years ago now. And Abdallah and I used to go out. We had a lot of fun together. We would monitor districts across the state of Wisconsin together, all the way to trying to figure out who was stealing his snacks from the shared refrigerator at DPI. So I appreciate that I'm still able to touch base with such a great friend of mine and my other friends there at DPI. Through capacities and avenues like this. So thanks for having us today. If you could go ahead to the next slide, Scott. So today we are just going to talk about, first of all, just bring up some MMSD context, just to give some background before we launch into Title II budgeting and the processes that we follow. And I would be, I have to, of course, talk about the private parochial equitable share management. That is a big part of the Title II process that is coming to the Madison School District with these funds. And then we will leave time to answer any questions that you have. So in the meantime, if you can put your questions that you have through the chat, that would be wonderful. All right, next slide. So if we could go on to the next slide. So while Scott's doing that, I'm going to just talk about our next slide there. Actually, if you could go back one, Scott. There we go. So Scott is being so helpful today. We were having Microsoft Office team issues because MMSD, our system, was blocking us from joining in DPI. So Scott is really helping us out with advancing the slides today. So thank you for that. So some context with MMSD. We have, at Second Friday count, we had 24,373 students. Our staff was at 4,819 with the breakdown of our teacher unit. in our EA unit. Going back to the number of students, I'm sure many of you, and if not all of you, are seeing this across the state as well. Our enrollment has dropped significantly due to the pandemic. We are about 1,000 students short this year compared to last year. Elementary schools, we have 32 elementary schools, 12 middles, 6 highs, 4 of those being comprehensive high schools, and I did not include our alternative programming that we also have across the district. So we have a lot of kids, a lot of staff, and you can kind of come up with a guesstimate there of all the administration that we have in the district as well. I apologize in advance because any of my kind of PDFs that I tried to include in our images that I tried to include are a little blurry. But what I wanted to put down was our central office org chart, because you're going to hear the word transparency mentioned a lot throughout this presentation. And I came to MMSD, like I said, from DPI 8 years ago. When I first came in, it really, Ruth and I worked very hard together over the last 8 years to kind of break the bubble that title funding was kept in, and to make it and all the entitlement budgeting as transparent as possible across the district. So I am putting up our org chart because these leaders at the central office, the ones that are responsible for making any decisions about needs assessment, needs at the school, our schools district, implementations, these are the people that we always need to be in touch with when we are, as grant managers, aligning budgets across, aligning all budgets across the district to maximize our resources. If we could go to the next slide. So I mentioned needs assessment. This is where every entitlement budget planning needs to start. Whenever we're talking about federal funds, there needs to be a plan. And this was another shift that I think we've been really working on over the last 8 years, was to remove the appearance of these supplemental funds coming through DPI as just more funds, to actually focusing and targeting these funds in the way that they were meant to be. Our needs assessment in the district is our strategic framework. This is a document that is very meaty. There is a lot of information in it, and it's basically our needs assessment in one place. It is our data. It's our input from our stakeholders. It's our input from our community, and it is our results oriented, just what we are doing in our district, and every decision that we make aligns with the strategic framework. I did put up the image too of our ESSA plan, that plan that every district needs to have as a result of that reauthorization into the Every Student Succeeds Act. Our ESSA plan in the school district is our strategic framework. In our minds, these two documents are completely interchangeable. So when we get the question asked, well, how did you determine what your Title II fund, or how you're going to utilize your Title II funds, and even your Title I funds, your Title III? Our answer is always, it's in our strategic framework. If it's not speaking to one of our goals in the district, it's not going to happen. One of our strategies, one of our 5 strategies in our strategic framework, is to invest in people, to equitably invest in our students and our staff, and even in our families across the district. When we're talking about investing in people, that directly ties to Title II. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. I would be remiss if I did not put down definition of Title II if we are going to be talking about this all together today. So the purpose of these funds, again, we're using them to increase student achievement and close achievement gaps by offering professional development opportunities in the core academic area. So recruiting, training, and preparing our teachers to be effective teachers, that continual learning process, that continual growth. So we are targeting towards teachers and paraprofessionals, and also administration to become effective instructional leaders. So if we could go to the next slide, I have some notes here that I'm trying to keep up with too. So if you hear paper rustling, that is what is going on. So more specifically, Madison School District. So we already know the context about how large we are, how much staff we have. So we are going to see a larger grant award than pretty much the majority of the districts across the state of Wisconsin. So our award for this year came in at just over $840,000. That private parochial equitable share that was taken directly off the top was about $109,000. We have 30 private schools in the Madison attendance boundaries that we are working with. We are targeting our funding towards personnel, so you will see higher personnel costs there. We will go into that in more detail. I did want to add, though, that we are taking an administrative reservation for private school clerical support. We have a clerical in my department in state and federal who is, her responsibility is to be working on Title II private parochial initiatives. That's a lot of work when you're talking about 30 private schools. It's good work, but it's a lot of work. Purchase services, so those contracts that we have that support our professional development implementations in the district. And then, of course, we have a little bit of funding left over for indirect. So you'll notice that the math doesn't quite make sense when you're looking at this slide, but it's really because we're always operating off of our unspent carryover from the year prior. So we need to kind of mentally add that into this slide. All right, so that gives the background on, thank you, Scott. So that gives the background on our, just kind of where we're at with our needs assessment, our budgeting. But really what I want to focus on too is the budget planning in Madison. We are a big place. And as crazy as it sounds, I mean, there are a lot of departments at our administration building. And it feels like at times that if you do not, like someone could be working maybe in the office next door to you and you might not talk to them for a couple days because you're so focused on your own work. I know we all get that, but then let's add to the virtualness of what is going on this year. Madison has remained virtual at this point for the entire year. So, and that goes for the same with the administration building. So just trying to keep in contact with everyone virtually and move forward with our planning in the way that meets the needs for our students. That's always our main focus. And it's gotten a little tricky. But so I'm going to speak to our budget planning processes, maybe like non-virtually in a non-pandemic year. We're still following this, but it may look a little differently. So again, I'm going to mention that word transparency. The title funds across the district, including Title II, felt like it was held by the department that maybe oversaw it the most. So Title II was in our professional development department and they used it and that was it. And it really wasn't, there really weren't many conversations across that central office org chart, that group of people that I put up at the beginning of the slide, or slide deck. So what Ruth and I worked on when I came in a few years ago is, and this sounds really basic, but it made a big difference. We came up with an Excel state and federal allocation spreadsheet. So I have, and it's actually, that's what it's called. We have it labeled that. I created a large spreadsheet with an Excel spreadsheet with tabs across the bottom. One tab is our Title I budget. The second tab is Title II. Third tab is Title III. All the titles, we added on ESSA, we added on GEAR this year. And I made it a document. Okay, I probably could have done a Google Doc, but this was 8 years ago and we were really into Excel, so it still exists in its Excel format, but it lives on a shared drive in the district and it's shared with the stakeholders in the district that need to see it. So whenever our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning is in a conversation about a new initiative and maybe budgeting comes up, she can go into the spreadsheet, see exactly where we are spending, what are we doing with Title II, and she's able to call me, talk about some shifts that we need to make in order to make sure that we're continually meeting all of our initiatives in the district with our funds. So that really opened up doors for conversations and for budget planning, and for a very effective system for the use of Title II budgets, because professional development does affect a lot of our departments across the district. It affects every staff member in the district. So of course, that's something that really needed to be as transparent as possible. Everyone needed to know what our budget was and where it was going. So that's still available. I keep that up to date almost daily. We make shifts across our titles, and I'm updating that for everybody. We have a state and federal weekly grants meeting. This is Ruth and I meet with our chief financial officer and our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. Now on a weekly basis. We were doing this bi-weekly, but with CARES Act funding, that has really added a lot to our entitlement conversation, or title conversations. Title II is a big topic of conversation, just making sure that we're aligning in the way that we need to be. We have monthly grants, so then we take it down another level. Ruth and I meet with the grants manager, or the department leads that are most affected by the grant. So Title II, our executive director of professional leadership and development, he needs to know what that looks like, what we're budgeting on. He's the one who's going to be bringing shifts to my attention and to Ruth's attention, so we can rebalance and rebudget. So we meet with those relevant department leads on a monthly basis. And then we have our expenditure approval process. Ruth, I'm going to ask that you jump in on that one.
Sure. So what happens is departments, or mostly with Title II, it's department secretaries might enter a requisition into the system. I will talk about payroll in a second. And then what happens is, with our accounting system, it goes through the approval process. And Jennifer is always the first approver for any federal grant funds based on her role in the district. And so then it would go on to accounting after that. So that would be part of the process within the system. We also set up our budgets based on the spreadsheet that Jennifer has discussed now our accounting system is Munis. I know a lot of you do not use that system, but we still have our budget matching what is on those spreadsheets, along with the DPI approved budget in WISE grants. If it's payroll, we have the secretaries that are responsible for the staff that are on this. They review payroll with their managers, and then payroll goes through the process for payroll. What also happens during that time is Jennifer's clerical support is responsible for all time and effort for the district. So he is maintaining a Google Doc. Now we are actually moving into the 21st century, and he does have a Google Doc out there that people can take their time and effort reports and put those signed documents in there. So when we are audited, all we have to do is go to that Google area and pull those documents up for the auditors. The auditors also sit with our payroll processor and look at the system on the approval process during when payroll's entered and when payroll is approved too. Then basically what happens every quarter, I'd like to do it monthly, but sometimes there's other things going on. I do an expenditure report, a year-to-date budget report, and I review those with what was spent versus what's budgeted out there. And then that's what I use for my quarterly claims. And usually if there's any changes or if something happened along the way, then I work with the budget managers to find out what got charged that was not on the approved budget, or else Jennifer and I work with it within WISE grants to make changes to the budget as needed. Jennifer, do you want to add the DPI input then?
Yes, and thanks, Ruth. I had to put that on there because we always phone a friend when we get into a jam, or we have just questions that we run into, like every one of us do that's on this call. And I had to obviously put a shout out to Abdallah there, because he is always receiving emails from us with our Title II questions, and we consider him a very valuable part of our Title II budget planning in Madison. All right, so next slide. So we looked at our needs assessment, we talked about our funds, we talked about all that communication that happens regarding alignment and use. And these are the areas that we are targeting our funds to for the 21-22 school year. So we have funds going to new educator mentors in the district. I mean, that is part of that recruitment and retention philosophy that is coming through Title II law. We have math and literacy coaches that are funded through Title II. Of course, we need to keep providing coaching for our teachers who are with our students every day. That's a big initiative for us. Classroom action research. This is a really interesting one. Substitutes. We are using funds to using Title II to fund substitutes. This is an annual cohort of teachers that sign up to do actual research for the district to be shared with the district, utilizing their own classrooms. This is a facilitated process, and something that we definitely want to keep going in the district. It's been pretty amazing. Extended employment for professional learning. I think pretty much a majority of districts across the state are going to be utilizing funds this way. We are participating with the National Equity Project. So these may be contractual and extended employment expenses. National Equity Project, virtual instruction training, that was kind of a shift. We weren't really planning for that last year, but that was a need that we recognized that our teachers needed some assistance, of course, to prepare for the school year. So we did make a revision this year to shift funds into that area. Dane County New Teacher Project as part of that new educator mentoring, and then American Association of Schools training. That is another area where we have funds for, and that's actually for professional development, a small amount of funds for at the administrative level. Okay, and I was totally fine with moving on to this slide, but I'm just going to say that with regards to the other one, limited PD this year. I mean, we, of course, had plans for in-person PD, for travel. There are just things that are not happening this year, which is impacting us and also impacting private parochial schools. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I am going to shift to private parochial equitable share. I understand that this might not be a topic that is kind of as critical out there for some districts versus others. I mean, again, we have 30 private schools. This is a pretty big part of the Title II business that happens in the school district. So if you don't have any private schools that you are working with regards to a share, this just might be interesting to hear what's happening in other districts across the state. But we have this equitable share, and it can be targeted towards the things that are listed here. So I'll let you read that as I keep talking. But this, again, I want to focus on transparency. This is another area where it just kind of felt like there was an equitable share. It was going out to the schools, but maybe not a lot of information going out to the private schools. So this is something that we have really built up over the last 8 years. First of all, to make sure that the private schools are aware these funds exist, what they can be used for, but then assisting them with spending the funding. So it's a pretty big job when it's taken seriously like it should be. Our philosophy is the private parochial students are receiving Title II funding, and these students come into the public schools. They may go back out to the private schools. We see this kind of in and out, and we really don't have, I think we have one private parochial high school in Madison. So our kids, these are our children, and they're going to come back to Madison. So we want to make sure that we are investing in every child across Madison, regardless of where they are. And that comes with doing this through Title II funding as well. So The one thing I want to add on this slide, though, is just that caution that when we're talking about Title II equitable share, these are the funds that we're utilizing to reimburse staff. So these are not funds that we should be directly sending to a private school and for them to utilize in the way that they want to with their business manager. These are reimbursements. I know Abdallah and I have had these conversations in the past that you can reimburse the staff for their expenses through a process that you have in place, or as a district, it might make more sense to actually do the arranging, do the purchasing, whatever, or event organizing on behalf of the private school staff member, so that MMSD in our world can directly pay the vendor, and you kind of loop out that private school person. Because what happens with this reimbursement process is the private school staff member has to pay for it first, and then they're going through a reimbursement process to get funding back. And that can lead to some situations, maybe some misunderstandings on the school's part that we've run into. Best practice, I know Abdallah said this, best practice is the district should work directly with vendors. When we're talking about 30 private schools in Madison, we just are not quite there yet. So I'm going to talk about the reimbursement process that we have where we work directly with our staff, our private parochial staff. All right, so if we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so just to give some background, again, I mentioned we have 30 private schools in the Madison attendance boundaries. Again, when we're talking about Title II, we are looking at overall enrollment for those private schools. That is how the Title II funds come to them if they decide they want to participate in services through their annual affirmation that they receive from the school district. So we don't worry about where students live, if they would have attended a title school. That's all Title I. We are just talking about Title II right now. So in Madison, again, this whole transparency thing, we make sure, and when I say we do have a private parochial coordinator, Stephanie Dankert, who has been doing this much longer than I have for Madison. She's amazing. We work very closely together to organize these services. So ongoing consultation with the private schools, that's something that is defined in law and should be happening every year with regards to just all titles that they may have access to, including IDEA. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. So we have a consultation in the fall and we have a consultation in the spring, just to make sure that we are covering all titles and IDEA, anything that comes up. Now ESSER and GEAR, there's a lot of conversations that we're having. We have continual emails and phone calls. So we are really in close communication with these schools. Let's see. So in the current year, the Title II allocation is released to the private schools once I start that work in WISE grants. Once we start working in there and we know by the affirmation who's participating, we have their counts, we get that preliminary allocation to them, but we only allow up to 50% of spending until grant approval. We just need to remain solvent, basically, in the Madison School District. This is all a reimbursement process to us. So we just want to be cautious with that. So we always work towards an approval from DPI as quickly as possible. Madison's really different. I know that, you know, we're required to send out those affirmations, have them sign right in time before that WISE grants application opens up. And before any consultation happens, any discussion of services, that affirmation needs to be signed. But in Madison, we have to do things extremely early because actually right now we are full into budget and staffing for 21-22. So this affirmation impacts Title I, which is where like that personnel concern comes from. So our affirmations go out to the private schools October for the following year, because we need to know what is happening for all titles and poverty counts. There's a lot of implications for us. If a district decides that, if a private school decides that they want to participate in services that year, we ask for their total enrollment count for in second Friday, like around that second Friday, January time. So that aligns with the counts that we're using in the school district, and that all drives the grant work for the following year. We do not hold the private schools to any affirmation decision that they've made the fall prior to, the start of the school year. If they want to change that decision at any time during the school year, we allow it up until WISE Grants opens, and then we are ready to go planning services. Okay. So I think we're going to go on to the next slide here. All right, so when I'm talking about, again, transparency, this is a rigorous process. And when we're talking about kind of working at the same time across all titles with the private schools, we realized quickly that we needed a place for the private parochial administrators to go to get the information that they need. So we created a Google private parochial site that would not restrict the administrators from seeing things that we wanted them to see, because we operate on we have our website, but then we have staff-only sites where MMSD staff can participate. But without that MMSD email address, our private schools were kind of being looped out of that system. So we created this Google site so that we were able to share what we needed to with them, and it was located on our state and federal landing page. So this is just the first page and the link to that site. Okay, if we go to the next slide. On that slide, or on that site, there is a Title II section. If you go to the Title II section, this is where we store documentation that the private parochial schools may need during the school year. So we always keep a copy of a needs assessment there. We talked about how we in the district operate. Everything is aligned to our needs assessment. We make sure that the private parochial Title II spending is aligned to the school's need assessment as well. So this is the document that we created that we have the private school administrator fill out each year. And I apologize for the images on this. They didn't turn out all that great. I can get copies to Abdallah and Scott maybe afterwards if anyone's interested. But what this is saying is it's asking for the multiple measures of assessments that the school district or the school used to determine what their student needs were. We want to really see what that data dig was. And then on the bottom of the sheet on the left, it then is listing, based on our data, based on our needs assessment, these are the needs that our teachers have this year to meet the needs that our students have. The document on the right is really just the backside of this page, and we always put down core academic areas, because if you've been around for a while like I have, we know that this has changed a little bit. This was a little more restricted years ago, so we always make sure that we are really referencing well-rounded education and core academic education, but using that well-rounded language and what that means. What are those areas that we're focusing on? Okay, next slide. Okay, so now that we have the needs assessment, we have the affirmation, we have the allocation for the private school, WISE Grants is all done, we had to come up with some sort of request process in the district, because when you are working on reimbursement, when you're working on anything operational business-wise, we're following the Madison Metropolitan School District purchasing and business processing process. You're following your own district processing process and applying that to the school district. So Ruth, Stephanie, and I had to really brainstorm together just to make sure that the process we came up for the private school completely aligns with the auditing needs of the Madison School District. So we came up with this process, and this is a form that our private school staff members need to sign, need to fill out, submit back to us, and just letting us know that this is the event that they're interested in. This is like the first contact we'll have with them. They know what their allocation is. Now, when they have PD opportunities, they submit this request to us. We get the information based on the request. And here is where we do the check to make sure it aligns with the needs assessment, but we're also doing the check to make sure that this is a high quality professional development event. This isn't just a one-time event teacher's going to go to and then that's it. This is something that's going to enable them to become a high quality or continue to be a high quality educator. They're maybe attending classes. And also we're asking for plans for sharing. We want to know like what this private school staff member is going to participate in, and then how are they going to share that with their students, with their staff? How is that coming back to their school? So that's all on that page. On the right, this is just a checklist. It's a little long and crazy, but like I said, we really haven't seen too many professional development requests come through. They're mostly been virtual requests because of the pandemic, obviously. On the right, this is just a reminder, like if you're traveling somewhere, keep this in mind about hotels, keep in mind about this with airfare. So that's really what that list is saying on the right. Again, I can get that information to everybody if you're interested. This is something that, again, we're trying to go into the 21st century and we've moved to a Google Form situation, so no longer a PDF. All right, Scott, am I running out of time here or are we good?
We've got 20 minutes left, so probably perfect. Should try to move through it, but yeah, you're doing a good pace. Thank you.
I am just about wrapping up here. So I want this on my tombstone someday, maybe not this picture or this language, but again, thinking about transparency, thinking about, okay, we have all these great processes in place, but the private schools keep contacting us saying, what's my balance? Where am I at? I submitted this request. Where is it in the process? And we realized that there was another level of transparency that we were missing. Like our private schools couldn't see where we were with their request process. Was it lost? Was it received? What's going on? So I will never say I'm like the most technology literate person in the world. I can hold my own, but I am definitely not fantastic. But this is something that I was so impressed with myself about. I was able to come up with a process, again, this time using Google Sheets and moving away from Excel to share that information in real time with our private schools. So if you could go to the next slide. Again, this is going to be like my one highlight achievement of my life. I'll take it. Okay, so I had said at the beginning of the presentation that we had this master spreadsheet that we shared all titles with everybody. We came up with 4 private parochial master spreadsheets, which is the image on the left. And what it is it's a giant long Google sheet where across the bottom, each private school is a tab. And we have one for Title II, we have one for Title IV, one for ESSER, and one for GEAR. We were able to, actually through some digging, come up with a way to have these sheets live through Google, but then have the private schools only see their tab on that sheet. So my assistant in state and federal keeps these sheets up real time. If a reimbursement request comes in, ESSER, GEAR, whatever, we keep these budget sheets up to date. And then the private school can go through the private parochial Google site that we created to the budget balance page. There is a page on there that says that, and then click on their school and they will be brought to their actual budget pages of those master spreadsheets. So it's a lot, there's like some formula, complicated work. This takes a while. Once you have it, it's very easy to roll over from year to year, but this has really been an amazing strategy so that our private school principals can check in anytime on their balances or orders or professional development activities. Okay, so if we can go to the next page, the next slide. This is actually my last slide. I just wanted to then speak to like everything sounds so great and fantastic, and we're really rocking it in MMSD, but we know that's not always the case. There's a lot of speed bumps along the way, and we try to work to improve this process every year. One of the biggest issues that we always run up against is the encouragement of spending down Title II for our private parochial schools. Our carryover is $146,000 from last year. From 1920 into this year. Those are unspent funds from last year. And if you think about it, we shut down in March. So there was still the majority of the year to spend down Title II funding for our schools. And now we have another almost 110,000 added to that carryover that we would like to see spent down. And I know that there's just some issues with this. First of all, inability to fund substitutes. I mean, that is something that, don't get me wrong, I would not look forward to like managing that whole payroll situation for 30 private schools. I'm not quite sure how we would do that, but until we can have this ability for the private schools, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to spend down funds. Lack of information reaching staff, like we're doing a really good job getting this information out to the principals, but if the principals don't in turn of the private schools let their staff members know that this opportunity exists, for their own staff, we every year we're running across teachers who have no idea that Title II exists or it's something that they can take advantage of. So again, we're always trying to work around that, see how we can assist in that area. And then just the inability for staff to fund expenditures prior to reimbursement. Again, we know we need to get to this time where we do all the arranging, organizing, purchasing airline tickets, doing that all directly through MMSD. We just don't have the manpower to do that for 30 private schools. So if we're asking staff to fund first and then being reimbursed, for some individuals, that's can be impossible. So that was a very long-winded kind of deep dive into how we manage Title II for our school district. So thank you all for hanging in there with us. We can open, I think we have a little more time for questions now, Scott, if that was the plan. Oh, I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Abdullah, do you have access to their questions from the chat?
Yes, I do. Jennifer and Ruth, I shared the document with you.
Okay.
And Scott, you have access to it too.
I do also.
All right. Okay, so I see, I'm just going to start at the very beginning of questions that I see. How are you budgeting for your clerical staff? Is she being paid a percentage out of Title II? Yep. So a clerical staff who organizes this Title II work out of that administrative reservation for Title II, a portion of her salary is coming out of there. Again, we always have to remember that we're able to show time and effort. So Ruth and I are the time and effort police for the Madison School. There are people scared of us there. So we always make sure that whatever percentage is coming out of the grant, that's what we are able to demonstrate is the work that that individual is performing.
And also too, she is totally federally funded. She also is Jennifer's assistant for Title I and homeless. So therefore, it makes it a little bit easier for her to keep a time and effort report. It's not like she's doing something else other than federally funded programs.
Mm-hmm. So how does your private clerical staff member handle time and effort reporting? We actually, so I have two clericals. My other clerical is the one that manages, primarily manages time and effort reporting. Ruth, my clerical, and I all keep track of pretty much everybody across the district who is responsible for time and effort reporting. We work closely with department secretaries to make sure that they are tracking it and having it under control. This is a whole nother topic to discuss, is time and effort reporting. So it's something that I can answer questions to maybe offline, but right now our staff are required to be filling it out. This staff member fills out a semi-annual, so we're filling out a report, or I'm signing her twice a year for that. And then we have different parts. Again, I can maybe that reach out directly. It's happening. Just no time and effort is definitely happening. How do you encourage the private schools to budget and spend their set aside funds? This is such a great question. I mean, I think it's just the multiple contacts, the consultations, being extremely transparent about the funds. Our consultation also includes best practices that we see other private schools, how they're utilizing their funds. If we see large balances at this time of the year, we also have individual meetings with the private schools to review their budget and making sure they're spending down. So I mean, I think we are doing a pretty good job with, Title IV, ESSER gear, because that's where we can purchase the things, especially in light of COVID. There was a lot of items needed at schools, but it's these PD funds we're struggling with. What does your new educator mentor budget look like? Ruth, do you know the FTE offhand of that?
So we don't do FTE. What we're doing is we are paying Dane County New Teacher Project, which is a consortium that does the work with our mentors and mentees to provide training. And they set up the workshops and they set up everything. So it's a contracted service that we're using with that consortium. So it's open to all schools in Dane County. I'm not sure what other schools in the state are using, if you're using your CSAs or if they have anything set up for new teacher training.
Yeah, we have the CUNA mentors though too, Ruth, or they were formerly on that grant.
Yes, formerly we used to actually pay our mentors to work with the staff, with the new teachers. That got moved to another area in the district to free up Title II funds for our coaches and other professional development for our staff.
Okay, thank you. I will definitely share those forms with Abdallah and Scott so that they can share that with everyone else. And I will also try to write up the process I did for this tab sharing thing. Actually, I think there's a YouTube video out there that I found. I mean, this was some intense research, so I will make sure we get that process out as well. What does your district do in regards to public school travel procedures? I mean, we are holding our private schools to the same procedures that we hold our public staff to. So I can get you some of that, there was kind of that checklist that was extremely blurry. So I'll send that, and I think that will outline that a little bit.
And just to add from like the accounting side, so what we have is we have an out of district form that staff who want to go to any training have to have approved. If they are going for training out of local funds, they have their principal or their department chair sign and approve that form. If they are using any title federal funding, be it Title I, Title II, Jennifer Waldner also must approve that training to make sure that it's appropriate for title. And then what happens when this staff come back, they turn in their receipts if they have, like, say, meals, etc. We as a district only pay a flat amount for out of district travel for meals. And then if they have mileage, that's also included on this form. So this form is like a two-part. First of all, it's asking to attend the training, and the back side of the form gives you all the areas that you possibly could think about, meals, hotels, etc. And then they, by day and of the week, and then they fill in the amount that they need to be reimbursed for. And then that form again is signed off by their manager, principal, and Jennifer. So then it first goes to accounting. So it's a two-part process.
Okay. And then maybe Scott and Abdallah about access to the slideshow. Will that be out there?
Yes, we've been recording this and it will be, I'm going to process it and make sure that the captioning captures the speech correctly, and then I'll turn it into our media people, and it will be posted on the DPI Title II web page. It will be a YouTube video with captioning, and I will also make sure an announcement goes out to the Title II listserv letting you know when it's ready. So we'll give you a heads up as soon as it's available.
Thank you. Then what percentage of your overall public school budget goes towards mentors? Ruth, maybe, and again, we have our FTE mentors and then our Dane County New Teacher Project. No, Ruth, you have an idea?
I say it's probably not even 2% when I look.
Well, we're looking at,
I mean,
I think it's more than that, because we're looking at least 3.0 FTE for people. And we have the contract.
oh, that's right. We do have those. Yeah. So I want to say it's like more than 25%. And that's
Yeah.
right. I did forget about, we do have full-time mentors who are also working with our staff. And yes, they all are full-time. So they all do time and effort reporting, and they are entitled to. I apologize. I also remember we used to have mentors that we would hire that were retired teachers, and
Yes.
they would get a stipend. But what we've done as a district is actually hired FTE staff who work solely with our new teachers as their mentors. So we have, is it 2.5 FTE at our district?
Yeah.
So yes, we have probably figure.
Are you calculating that out? Ruth is my.
Yes, of course I am.
I know. I was sure she was going
it's
to.
probably about 20% of our budget goes towards new mentors.
Okay. Thank
with
you.
Contracted service from Dane County and our staff.
All right. And the next one, with regards to clerical staff, do I need to charge public Title II and private Title II the same percentage? It seems it takes more time than the public. You're correct. I mean, we see that on our end too. Again, you're following that time and effort report. Whatever percentage they're working whatever effort they're working should match the percentages coming off the grant. Ruth, I don't know if you want to add to that.
The private side of Title II does not have a budget for public staff. So we are taking our clerical staff off the administrative reservation, right? For Title II, it's not coming off of the private school funds. The private school funds are still going directly to the private schools.
Okay, and I think that is the last one I see on there for now.
Jennifer, I had put a question on there that I think may have disappeared off the top of your list. And
Okay.
that was just wondering whether your strategic assessment was publicly available in case anyone wanted to model their program after yours.
Yes, our strategic framework is very available. So if you go right to the Madison Metropolitan webpage, it's going to be, if you go to About, which we all have on our district pages, it's right there.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you again, both, so much for your willingness to give time during a really demanding time and your generosity with your experience and your expertise. This is so appreciated, and I know that it will make a big difference to a lot of our schools and districts in figuring out how to navigate a really complicated funding source.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
I'd just like to add, I know Jennifer had it on the slide as a bullet, but indirect cost. So if you do not have somebody that is totally, doing their time towards private schools, you could take that indirect cost allocation from Title II also. And that might be a better way instead of doing time and effort.
Fantastic. These are such practically useful suggestions. I so appreciate it. And the last thing I wanted to share with you was just contact information for Abdullah and me at the Department of Public Instruction. Abdullah is our Title II manager. I handle mostly the administrative and clerical side of things, but we collaborate on all of this. So feel free to get in touch with us if you have further questions, if you have feedback about this webinar series or concerns, or if you'd like to volunteer yourself as a potential presenter for this program. We appreciate so much the generosity of our LEAs and district staff to make these things happen. Have a wonderful rest of the day, all, and thank you again for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.